Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about comparison questions and how to address them. Now, what are comparison questions? They are questions that come with comparative terms. So, for example, more than, most important, the key factor, rather than, most significant, better than, and so on and so forth. Now, most important and the key factor are comparison questions because they are positing a subject as the most important out of many other subjects. Okay, likewise for key factor, because key is a synonym of most important. Okay, so the rest I think are quite straightforward, right? Now, how then do we come up with a comparison? Okay, we need to be able to weigh the various subjects in the same paragraph or in the paragraph immediately after. But for simplicity's sake, right, I advise you to compare within the same paragraph always. All right, that will be a lot easier and less taxing for you. So instead of just merely listing their strengths and weaknesses independently, that means you shouldn't be listing something about subject A and then followed by rebuttal, and then you list out subject B in that rebuttal. All right. So how do we start to think about comparison in terms of criteria, right? So you can start to think about breadth and depth. Does the subject impact more people on a superficial level or fewer people on a deeper level, right? In terms of scale and frequency, we talk about scale first. Does this thing affect everyone, or does it only affect a specific group of people? So basically universal versus specific, right? Frequency, sustained versus sporadic. All right, so you're comparing in terms of the frequency by which something happens more than another thing, right? Level of influence, macro versus micro. Potential, perception versus reality. Is something really the case in reality or merely perceived to be so? So this is something where you can say, oh, it may seem that, for instance, individuals or governments determine the fate of the environment. You can say something like, it might seem that the government is more important in determining the fate of the environment, but in reality might not be the case. And that's where you start to think about why not. Okay. You can also contrast between long-term and short-term impact. Okay. But I think the easier way is for you to see how some of these things are applied in the question. All right. Obviously, I can't apply everything in the question, and they are not meant to be universally applied. Okay, so because remember, these are just thinking stems. And you find a way of comparing that is easier for you. All right. Sometimes when I practice, I realize sometimes I don't even think about all these. You know, I'm going to show you how the thing goes through an example. Okay, so based on question 7, or which comes from your recent timed practice, individuals, not nations, determine the fate of the environment discussed. So questions like you want to ask yourself would be something like, what makes individuals more key? And what makes nations, in other words, governments, you can interpret nations as governments, more key? Does the nature, characteristic of the environmental problem play a part in influencing the abilities of the individual or the government? Okay, so we're going to go through some of the points. So the first point is written out for you. I use this framework. I thought that it really helped me organize my comparison effectively. So within one paragraph. So A and A belongs to one topic sentence. Yeah, okay. So if you think about people, I ask myself, how do people determine the fate of the environment? So I can argue that collective efforts, right, from the grassroots, all right, are far more powerful Why? Because there are a lot of them, right? With a lot of new efforts implemented daily, right? And so in this case, I can link it to the idea that it is actually a more sustained effort, right? And therefore more effective. As compared to government measures that are perhaps fewer and more sporadic in nature. Okay, so that is one way to do a comparison, and this is one topic sentence. Okay, the bracketed parts will be your elaboration, right? In your elaboration, you mentioned them through as you're explaining. Okay, now I can start to actually it doesn't matter where you begin, because the trick is that you will be, if you, for example, if you write something over here, you will flip and write something over here. Okay, I'll show you how it goes. So for example, if I say that nations or governments, in other words, are more key, I can start to think about the type of environmental problem. So while it is the fact that maybe people can affect local environmental problems, maybe nations are better at doing at handling transnational the transnational nature of environmental issues. So here you can talk about how let me type it down. Transnational. You can talk about the transnational issues necessitate the cooperation, all right, between countries. Okay, and so in this case, only the government has the authority. Okay, so here people no such authority. So people really don't have that kind of political power, right, to cooperate with other nations at the governmental level. Okay, so because so that is one idea that you can think about. All right, so I'm going to just mark it out with a color, sea green. Okay, so you can see that they are together. This is one. So A in this angle is 1 point, and this is another point. All right, and this one is in support of government being more important, right? You can also start to think about how governments have the expertise. Because they are able to empower the scientists, researchers, you know, they have the they can draw on the talents of the country. All right, so they're more able to construct, right, truly useful programs, right? So this one is in contrast to people who have perhaps less knowledge, okay, and perhaps this kind of like dilutes the impact of their efforts. All right. Okay, maybe they're barking up the wrong tree. So for instance, you think about how all of us think that plastic straws are an issue, but if with more knowledge, you will know that plastic straws are just something that doesn't really impact much on plastic waste in the ocean. All right, there are greater problems out there, and so perhaps we won't be able to because if you leave it to the people, they might be expending all their effort in the wrong direction, in the wrong areas. Okay, so only governments who have more access to such knowledge can bring about more meaningful actions. Okay, so therefore more effective, and so more important lah in determining the fate of the environment. So in this case, right, I mean, when I brainstorm, okay, this is a perfectly good comparison, but so that's why I say sometimes you can just do this and you don't have to really worry about the breadth of that, because I mean this works for me. But if you want to really apply it, right, I think it could be talking about depth. All right, where you are looking at how the efforts, all right, are truly insightful. All right, so it like it goes deeper rather than being on a superficial level. So people here, all right, the efforts might be superficial. Okay. So that is another point. So you have 3 points in total now. And then of course, like I said, it doesn't matter where you come from, just as long as you're able to link it to the other side. So over here, you can start to think about how maybe governments are less effective, not as key, because I guess you can think about how governments have to keep on balancing, right? Between national needs, between national and environmental needs, and so sometimes it kind of like dilutes the impacts the efficacies of their measures. So basically, they provide half-assed measures. All right. So you can think about Singapore's carbon tax, for instance, how it is actually too low to be effective. All right, and that's because we are worried that if we place too high a carbon tax on companies, all right, it might reduce our competitiveness, all right, and affect our national economic progress. All right, economic growth. Okay, so here you have so here you have one. So you are going to link it over to the people side. So people are actually much better. Why? Because you can all these grassroots efforts are not encumbered. So they're not bogged down. They're not burdened, all right, with such concerns. And can be more, then they're often more complete measures. That means they really go all out when they want to do something. All right. And that is why they're arguably more effective. And that's why individuals are more key, all right, are more important in determining the fate of the environment. So for this, you can, let me see what examples can I give you. Okay. You can think about how like all these people can truly focus their efforts on environmental preservation and really bring about more positive change through this example. How grassroots campaigns by tribal communities in the US, like they organize local assemblies and pressured Congress to protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska. All right, from oil drilling. Okay, so here you can see that despite the obvious economic impact such environmental measures will cause, grassroots efforts, because they are not so concerned about these kind of economic, this need to balance economic progress, they are able to really focus their efforts totally. All right. So they can relentlessly campaign for it. And so actually this was quite effective because in June 2021, the US government suspended oil and gas leases in the Arctic refuge. And this is really a testament to the very relentless all right, effort of these tribal communities. So the tribal communities in question, right, is this community called the Green Edge community. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to put it down. Yeah, okay. There. All right. So you already have, as you can see, okay, B to B, that's one. All right, A to A, that's another one. A to A over here and B to B over here. So this is when you start to organize your points and see how they can become OAR, OAR as and so on and so forth. Okay. I don't know whether I want to do it for you or not, but okay, I think I shall. But it's gonna take a bit longer. All right, this video therefore take a bit longer. So let's just say that we start off with collective grassroots efforts. All right, from the people are far more numerous. Okay, so one, okay, so that's one. I'm just going to do them in brief. Let's see how it goes. Then compared to B, let's see B, government have more expertise. So I'm going to do the grassroots are not encumbered. Okay, so right. Then rebuttal. Yet. Yeah, I think that actually works given how the government has great expertise. Okay, so yeah, unencumbered. So this is basically a conceit, right? I concede this, and then I am challenging and saying that despite this, the government is still better. All right. Likewise, I'm also saying this. I'm also conceding the OA in this rebuttal, right? So despite the collective being more effective, but but this is perhaps only at the but we have to think about how on a more macro level, where that, like given the international nature of transnational nature. Okay, governments are more key. So basically, I'm doing a concession and refutation. All right. Basically, if you look at my video on rebuttals, part 1, part 2, this is the second method. Okay. Yeah. So then the last point for comparison questions of this nature, you can actually challenge the false dichotomy. This means that you are saying that actually we need both government and individuals. I think a mature essay would acknowledge this. It wouldn't just swing to one side over the other. It would say, it would perhaps it will go along the lines of, it will like consider how complex the issue is, and actually we need both government and individuals to work together, right? And an example of this could be about for instance, let me think. This is often seen in the issue of waste prevention, right? While governments can implement measures to really reduce overconsumption, but it is really up to the individuals to cut our unnecessary purchases. All right, so you can think about that in the context of the textile industries, or in terms of food waste, right? So we don't. So we need both governments and individuals to work together, so that we can reduce the amount of raw materials that we draw from the environment, okay, and therefore protect it. So we need both. Okay? So that is one way of completing your essay, right, for such a question. Okay, whew. All right. You can start to think about, you can start to pick up A-level questions for comparison. You can also look at your recent timed practice. It has quite a few comparison questions inside. Just to let you have a glimpse, right? This is just something that I did just for fun, right? So I was doing, I think it was 2021's, was it 2022? I think it's 2021's A-level question. So power these days lies more with the people than matrix. All right, and this was the point that I came up with. So I do hope this framework helps you answer comparison questions a bit more easily. And if you try it out, and you have any questions that how come, like maybe you apply this framework to this question, it doesn't really work, but do find me for consult. Ask your friends first, and then you can find me for consult. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you.